faithfully delivering value by interpreting great books from around the world. Hi, this is Sally with the Book Talk. Today we're interpreting the book called Elegant Aging with the subtitle Your Guide to Healthy Living Before 100. Medical advances have greatly extended human lifespan, and in the future, everyone might live to 100. But the catch is, no one wants to age while being sickly. So, how can we age elegantly without illness or pain? Beyond genes and luck, it depends on whether you've overcome ignorance, folly, and laziness in health matters and made wise choices. The author of this book, Gerald Winter, is a professor of pharmacology and toxicology at the University at Buffalo in New York, with over 50 years of teaching and rich research experience. In the book, he combines the latest medical research to help you scientifically understand fundamental health concepts like drugs, nutrition, exercise, and various diseases. These concepts, we're mostly familiar with them, but in specific issues, there might be cognitive blind spots and misconceptions. For example, can eating more calcium prevent osteoporosis? Can people with high blood pressure still exercise? If cholesterol is high, can't one eat egg yolks anymore? And so on. The book analyzes the principles and truths behind these issues, helping us avoid detours on the path to elegant aging. The book is divided into 3 parts. Part 1 introduces the principles of drug action and issues related to nutritional supplements. Part 2 organizes nutrients in food, dietary patterns, exercise, weight loss, etc. Part 3 mainly discusses the treatment and prevention of various age-related diseases. I'll organize the book's content into 2 types of questions for your explanation. One type is closely tied to people's lifestyles, like diet, exercise, and medication use. Things people can control themselves. The other type is things people hope to control, namely various diseases, such as cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease, cancer, osteoporosis, etc. First, let's talk about things people can control. Here, we'll cover 3 things: diet, exercise, and medication use. As the saying goes, illness enters through the mouth. So, let's start with diet. The primary purpose of eating is to gain nutrition to sustain life. Human nutrition has made significant progress to date. For example, people have discovered carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. These 3 macronutrients, macro meaning large scale, indicate that the body has a high demand for them. Correspondingly, these are micronutrients that the human body requires in relatively smaller amounts. For example, vitamins and minerals. The metabolic mechanisms of various nutrients have been thoroughly researched. However, the effects of many nutrients on human health are still inconclusive. Combined with influences from politics, commerce, and other factors, this can lead to misconceptions about certain nutrients. For instance, sugar. In recent years, sugar has gotten a bad rap, with people believing it causes various diseases. Since the 1970s and 80s, there have been many best-selling books in the US discussing healthy diets, some even blatantly labeling sugar as a poison. So, why do people turn pale at the mention of sugar? This brings us to the basic classification of sugars and the principles of digestion and absorption. Sugars are divided into 3 types: monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. Monosaccharides include glucose and fructose. For example, fruits are rich in glucose and fructose. Disaccharides are formed by the combination of 2 monosaccharide molecules, such as sucrose and maltose. By extension, complex structures formed by multiple monosaccharides linked together are called polysaccharides. For instance, starch in rice, potatoes, and corn is composed of multiple glucose molecules bonded together. Sugars consumed in the diet, whether monosaccharides, disaccharides, or polysaccharides, they are almost all converted into glucose and absorbed by the body. Let's take rice as an example to see how starch, the most common dietary carbohydrate, is digested. After starch from rice enters the body, it is quickly broken down into glucose, absorbed by the intestines, then passes through the liver into the bloodstream. Most of this glucose is converted into energy substances, and adenosine triphosphate, abbreviated as ATP, is the direct energy source required for muscle contraction in the human body. Muscle contraction is what generates force. Another small portion of glucose goes to the brain as its sole energy source, and any surplus is stored by the body as glycogen. Glycogen is the body's sugar reserve. When glucose levels in the body are low, the body mobilizes glycogen to break down into glucose and re-enter the bloodstream. However, glycogen storage space is limited. Once full, excess glucose in the blood is converted into fat. If you're eating not rice but sucrose, it breaks down into glucose and fructose. Glucose metabolism is as described earlier, but fructose metabolism is slightly different. After a series of conversions, most fructose also becomes glucose, but some is directly converted into fat. So, compared to glucose, fructose seems to convert into fat more efficiently. It's precisely because of fructose's unique metabolic mechanism that some people say a high fructose diet is equivalent to a high fat diet. Others claim that eating too much sucrose can cause metabolic syndrome, including hypertension, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes. Because sucrose contains fructose molecules, the author points out that these views are too one-sided. For instance, with type 2 diabetes, its clearest causative factor is obesity, which can result from any form of excessive energy intake. In other words, if you overeat, whether it's fat, protein, or carbs, it can lead to obesity. Sugar itself shouldn't be the scapegoat.
Moreover, many sugar-rich foods like fruits, veggies, and grains not only contain sugar, but also essential nutrients like vitamins, minerals, and fiber.
Therefore, in daily life, we should try to eat less refined sugars like sucrose and high fructose corn syrup, because they provide almost no nutritional value besides calories. Instead, eat more fresh fruits, veggies, and whole grains to meet your nutritional and energy needs while controlling calorie and sugar intake. On the flip side, another macronutrient, protein, has people flocking to it. Protein is the building block of muscles. In everyday life, you'll find various protein supplements on shelves at supermarkets and gyms, all claiming to be great aids for muscle growth. But the truth is, only exercise promotes muscle growth, and excess protein adds calories that eventually turn into fat. Our daily diet provides enough protein for your needs, so even if you want more, you don't need protein supplements. Third, the last macronutrient is fat. Fat comes in two forms: liquid oils, like vegetable oil, and solid fats, like animal fats, such as lard. People might think fat is unhealthy and makes you gain weight. But if you consume no fat at all, it could cause physiological dysfunction. For example, the synthesis of many hormones requires fat, so insufficient fat intake can lead to inadequate hormone production. For women, this might affect the menstrual cycle. Additionally, some essential nutrients for the body, like vitamins A, D, E, and K, all require fat to be absorbed. Lack of these vitamins can also threaten physical health. For example, vitamin A deficiency can easily lead to night blindness, so you shouldn't completely avoid fat in your daily diet. Plus, as long as you control total calories, eating fat won't cause obesity. Besides the three major macronutrients, we also need to obtain micronutrients like vitamins and minerals from our diet. Many people consider taking nutritional supplements as an important part of daily health maintenance, especially micronutrient supplements. But these supplements might not bring the health benefits you expect, and taking them randomly carries big risks. First, so far, supplements can't mimic nutrients in natural foods. For example, vitamin E supplements usually include just one component, alpha tocopherol. But vitamin E in food is way more complex. It contains 8 different structural forms. So far, scientists don't know how these components divide labor and cooperate. Secondly, many supplements provide nutrient levels that exceed what the body needs, and excess can bring potential risks. For instance, studies show that long-term excessive intake of vitamin A in women increases the risk of osteoporosis and hip fractures, while in healthy men, long-term excessive vitamin E supplements raise prostate cancer risk by 17%. Plus, multiple studies have found that excessive calcium has potential harm to the heart. Finally, because nutritional supplements aren't drugs, there's a lack of effective regulation for them. For example, in the US, under a law called the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, DSHEA, the FDA, that is, the Food and Drug Administration, has no authority to require supplement manufacturers to prove their products' effectiveness or even safety, and the FDA can't approve their ads.
That means most health supplement ads in the US are just casually slapped on by manufacturers and sellers.
As some supplement manufacturers say before getting caught, they've already made a fortune. And for most people, for the majority of their lives, all essential nutrients the body needs can be obtained from various natural foods. Currently, two dietary plans are widely recommended in medicine. One is the Mediterranean diet, and the other is the DASH diet, dietary approaches to stop hypertension. Both are characterized by large amounts of fruits and veggies. Whole grains, cereals, low-fat or fat-free dairy, a little lean meat, fish, and nuts. The main difference between them lies in fat content. The Mediterranean diet recommends cooking with olive oil, with fat accounting for 40 to 50% of all calories. In the DASH diet, fat intake is controlled to 30% of total calories. Both diets have been proven to prevent and alleviate many diseases, such as heart disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cancers like colorectal cancer. The Mediterranean diet can also slow down Alzheimer's disease. Having covered diet, let's now talk about exercise, the second thing we can control. Clear research evidence shows that exercise can prevent and alleviate multiple diseases, including hypertension, heart disease, osteoporosis, obesity, Alzheimer's, and even cancer. But the catch is, you need to grasp the right exercise principles. There are two most important principles. First, do both aerobic and anaerobic exercise. To understand this principle, we need some basic muscle knowledge. Exercise requires muscle contraction to provide power, and muscle contraction needs immediate energy. That energy source is adenosine triphosphate, ATP, which we mentioned earlier. ATP exists in every cell but in limited supply. If the action is very short, like lifting a weight once or standing up from a squat in under 3 seconds, the stored ATP in the body is sufficient. This instantaneous action doesn't require oxygen and is called anaerobic exercise. Common strength training is anaerobic, but if you're exercising for a long time, like jogging or swimming, the stored ATP isn't enough. This relies on various nutrients in the body combined with oxygen to continuously produce new ATP for muscle use. Therefore, you must breathe faster and deeper. This oxygen-dependent exercise is called aerobic exercise. So why combine aerobic and anaerobic exercise? Because they have different effects. Under anaerobic conditions, the muscle fibers that contract most intensely thicken, making muscles bigger and stronger. For example, six-pack abs and a V-shaped torso are results of long-term high-intensity anaerobic exercise. For ordinary people, especially the elderly, even if you don't care about abs, you should still do some anaerobic exercise regularly. Because as you age, year by year, both the quantity and strength of your body's muscles gradually decrease. The elderly and frail are prone to falls, which can even be fatal, and anaerobic exercise precisely addresses this issue. On the other hand, regular long-term aerobic exercise benefits the entire body system by enhancing muscle fibers' ATP production capacity, thus improving the body's oxygen delivery capabilities. Through sustained training, the heart becomes stronger, enabling it to pump more blood per minute. Respiratory endurance also improves to sustain faster, deeper breathing, while the nervous system becomes more agile at redirecting blood flow between areas. But not all aerobic exercise achieves such ideal training effects. A leisurely stroll around the neighborhood, yields different results than a brisk run. That's what we're addressing. The second exercise principle, aerobic activity must reach appropriate intensity. So what intensity is right? Your aerobic heart rate should hit 60% to 75% of your maximum heart rate. How do you determine your maximum heart rate? A simple estimate is 220 minus your age. For example, at age 40, max heart rate is 180. Effective exercise range is 108 to 135. So, how long should this heart rate be sustained? It still depends on your exercise intensity. Below 60% max heart rate, no duration significantly improves oxygen capacity. Conversely, even short bursts of high-intensity training rapidly achieve aerobic benefits. Studies show sedentary middle-aged people gain remarkable fitness with just 36 weekly minutes at approximately 85% max heart rate. Beyond diet and exercise, the third controllable aspect is medication use. You might think just following doctor's orders suffices. Actually, understanding drug basics empowers you with more initiative when facing illness. First, grasp three concepts: adverse drug reactions, drug tolerance, and drug dependence. Adverse drug reactions are unintended effects occurring during treatment. These adverse physical reactions are inherent to every medication. Faithfully delivering value by interpreting great books from around the world. Hi, this is Sally with the Book Talk. Today, we're interpreting the book called Elegant Aging, with the subtitle Your Guide to Healthy Living Before 100. Medical advances have greatly extended human lifespan, and in the future, everyone might live to 100, but the catch is, no one wants to age while being sickly. So, how can we age elegantly without illness or pain? Beyond genes and luck, it depends on whether you've overcome ignorance, folly, and laziness in health matters and made wise choices. The author of this book, Gerald Winter, is a professor of pharmacology and toxicology at the University at Buffalo in New York, with over 50 years of teaching and rich research experience. In the book, he combines the latest medical research to help you scientifically understand fundamental health concepts like drugs, nutrition, exercise, and various diseases. These concepts, we're mostly familiar with them, but in specific issues, there might be cognitive blind spots and misconceptions. For example, can eating more calcium prevent osteoporosis? Can people with high blood pressure still exercise? If cholesterol is high, can't one eat egg yolks anymore? And so on. The book analyzes the principles and truths behind these issues, helping us avoid detours on the path to elegant aging. The book is divided into three parts. Part 1 introduces the principles of drug action and issues related to nutritional supplements. Part 2 organizes nutrients in food, dietary patterns, exercise, weight loss, etc. Part 3 mainly discusses the treatment and prevention of various age-related diseases. I'll organize the book's content into two types of questions for your explanation. One type is closely tied to people's lifestyles, like diet, exercise, and medication use, things people can control themselves. The other type is things people hope to control, namely various diseases such as cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease, cancer, osteoporosis, etc. First, let's talk about things people can control. This shows that the patient has developed tolerance to morphine. Here, drug tolerance isn't the same thing as drug resistance. The targets are different. Drug tolerance is an adaptive response of the human body to the drug itself, while drug resistance refers to pathogens. For instance, when bacteria develop resistance to a drug, using that drug becomes ineffective against infections caused by those bacteria. Drug tolerance can lead to another issue. After stopping morphine, patients may experience various physical discomforts, like restlessness, vomiting, diarrhea, runny nose, muscle aches, chills, and fever. These symptoms, very similar to severe flu, are called withdrawal syndrome. Once withdrawal syndrome appears, it means the patient's body has developed drug dependence on morphine. Besides opioids like morphine, Drugs such as sleeping pills and antidepressants can cause drug dependence, an inevitable pharmacological phenomenon unrelated to personal willpower. This is different from what we commonly call drug addiction. Drug dependence is purely physiological, while drug addiction involves psychological aspects. If only drug dependence occurs, withdrawal syndrome may happen, but there won't be strong psychological cravings after stopping the drug. For example, people with severe insomnia might depend on Valium to help them sleep. However, once insomnia improves, patients won't have a psychological craving for Valium anymore. Whereas drug addiction is actually a psychological craving, even after withdrawal syndrome vanishes, patients still have a strong mental desire for the drug, and thus, drug dependence doesn't necessarily lead to addiction, but drug addiction always involves dependence. As the saying goes, all medicines have some toxicity. It's clear that drugs carry many potential risks when treating diseases. As a pharmacologist, the author is especially cautious about drugs. Beyond the issues with drugs themselves, there are other reasons. In the US, the FDA's approval and regulation of drugs sometimes consider political and commercial factors. For instance, research in related fields is sponsored by pharmaceutical companies, creating loopholes in how certain drugs are marketed and distributed. The author believes that the basic principle of medication should be that drugs are always the last resort. Only when disease symptoms severely affect vital activities and non-drug approaches have failed should drug therapy be considered. It's all right. In the first part, we revisited diet, exercise, and medication use. These are things in life we can control. In the second part, let's discuss what we want to avoid. That is, various diseases we might face as we age, so we can prevent them early and respond rationally. The first type is cardiovascular disease, also known as cerebrovascular disease. Its root cause is abnormal cholesterol buildup, blocking normal blood flow, and leading to artery clogging and hardening. But clogging and hardening don't happen overnight. They're the result of accumulation over time. Sometimes a heart attack hits suddenly, feeling super urgent. Heart attacks and strokes are also chronic diseases of the cardiovascular system. If someone has a heart attack at age 50, then around their 20s, a plaque had already formed on their artery walls. As this plaque grows bigger, it eventually blocks the blood vessel, causing a heart attack. So, if you want to make a change, the earlier you start, the better. A landmark epidemiological study, the Framingham Heart Study, identified 9 major risk factors for cardiovascular disease: gender, age, family history, hypertension, obesity, diabetes, high cholesterol, lack of exercise, and smoking. These factors can't be changed, but for other risk factors, do we have ways to avoid them? For example, the first step in treating high blood pressure isn't meds, but diet and exercise. Research shows aerobic exercise, like alternating walking and running twice a week for 30 minutes each, can effectively lower blood pressure. Surprisingly, scientists found anaerobic exercise also helps with blood pressure, like planks, wall sits, or horse stance every other day for a minute each time. Stick with it for good results. Diet-wise, scientists discovered eating less salt effectively lowers blood pressure because table salt, sodium chloride, if too much, messes with kidney sodium excretion. More sodium in the blood increases blood volume, putting pressure on vessels and raising blood pressure. But for cardiovascular disease, less salt isn't always better. About 6 grams daily is ideal. Less than that can actually harm cardiovascular health. Oh, and potassium ions can offset sodium's harm. Therefore, people with high blood pressure should eat more fresh fruits and veggies rich in potassium, especially various legumes, leafy greens, bananas, whole grains, etc. These foods are precisely the most common types in the DASH diet and Mediterranean diet. Among cardiovascular disease risk factors, type 2 diabetes has comparable impact to hypertension. Currently, most type 2 diabetes can be prevented by avoiding obesity. One final risk factor is high cholesterol. Online searches overflow with oversimplified advice about lowering it to prevent or treat cardiovascular disease. For example, some dietary guidelines claim eating 2 eggs daily means exceeding cholesterol limits. Remember, high cholesterol refers to blood levels, not dietary cholesterol. Most blood cholesterol comes from liver synthesis, not food, meaning dietary cholesterol doesn't directly impact blood cholesterol levels. Cardiovascular disease has multiple causes, so prevention requires comprehensive strategies. The wise choice is medical intervention, including quitting smoking, regular aerobic anaerobic exercise, achieving and maintaining healthy weight, and DASH Mediterranean dietary patterns. Next, the second common age-related disease, Alzheimer's, often called senile dementia, the ultimate threat to graceful aging. Abnormal protein clusters in patients' brains damage neural tissue, progressing from forgetfulness to emotional instability, slurred speech, incontinence, bedridden state, and eventual death. For many, this becomes a fate worse than death. Studies show apolipoprotein E4 gene carriers face higher Alzheimer's risk. Carriers may show memory decline as early as their 30s. And fortunately, those with this pathogenic gene represent a small minority. For most, age is Alzheimer's primary risk factor. Over 95% develop it after age 65. Obesity, diabetes, high cholesterol, and smoking are also risk factors, with no truly effective drug treatments currently available. In 2009, the American Aging Association noted that once Alzheimer's disease starts progressing, there's no drug to stop or slow it down. So, how can we prevent Alzheimer's disease? For instance, research shows higher education lowers the risk, and more social, mental activities help, plus exercise, because it's good for our brains too. The third common age-related disease is osteoporosis. Its biggest threat is causing fractures, like hip fractures, where 1/5 of seniors die within a year, and worse, many more end up bedridden. Seniors with hip fractures become bedridden for life. The main risk factor for osteoporosis is also age. Many think bones stay stable once formed, but actually, bone is one of the body's most active tissues, constantly remodeling over a lifetime. Bones have two cell types. Osteoblasts build new bone, and osteoclasts break down old bone. Ideally, they balance out, but many factors disrupt this balance, like hormone levels, including testosterone, estrogen, and parathyroid hormone. As we age, these hormone levels change a lot. For example, after women go through menopause, low estrogen lets osteoclasts dominate, causing bone loss. But using estrogen supplements to prevent or treat osteoporosis must be done very carefully. In the 1950s, the U.S. ran a women's health initiative where doctors thought estrogen supplements could prevent osteoporosis and cut heart disease risk in postmenopausal women. They recruited over 160,000 women for the trial, but it backfired. Estrogen didn't help osteoporosis and instead raised heart disease and even breast cancer risks. So, right now, there's no super effective medical cure for osteoporosis, but we can still take steps to lower the risk as we get older. First, bone growth peaks in childhood and early adulthood. So build a strong foundation by getting plenty of vitamin D and calcium. These are key for osteoblasts to make new bone. Now, second, regardless of age, you must keep exercising. Lack of exercise causes bone loss that even extra calcium can't fix. Multiple studies show exercise significantly reduces all kinds of fractures. Also, it's best not to be too thin because excessive body fat reduction lowers bone density. Third, don't smoke and avoid excessive alcohol. Research shows both tobacco and alcohol greatly increase osteoporosis risk. Fourth, for women after age 50 and men after 70. After 70, you can moderately increase calcium and vitamin D intake. The best sources are food, milk, dried shrimp, leafy greens are rich in calcium, and 15 minutes of sun exposure provides ample vitamin D. The fourth major category of disease is cancer. Now let's discuss the king of serious illnesses, cancer. Over 100 types have been identified, each with unique characteristics, causes, and progression, but most are closely tied to human aging. Scientists found over 90% of cancers occur after age 40. Regrettably, so far, the medical field hasn't made significant breakthroughs in cancer treatment. Since the 1970s, cancer mortality rates globally haven't changed much.
Currently, most scientists believe prevention far outweighs treatment for cancer. The most comprehensive cancer prevention knowledge comes from a 2011 report in the British Journal of Cancer titled The Fraction of Cancer Attributable to Lifestyle and Environmental Factors.
This report synthesized and analyzed hundreds of high-quality epidemiological studies from past decades. For 18 cancers, researchers examined 14 lifestyle or environmental factors. Smoking ranked first, accounting for 19.4% of all cancer risks. And next were diet, overweight or obesity, occupation, sun exposure, infections, ionizing radiation, exercise, reproductive factors, and postmenopausal hormone levels. Overall, 1/3 of new cancer cases could be prevented through lifestyle changes like quitting smoking or alcohol, eating more fruits or veggies, avoiding red or processed meats, losing weight, and exercising more. Regarding cancer, we need to add something crucial. The pain it brings often outweighs the fear of death itself. For many cancer patients, the gradually intensifying pain as the disease progresses is the most terrifying demon. Nietzsche said, "Illness damages the body, pain tortures the soul." Many late-stage cancer patients lose all will to live simply because the agony is unbearable. It's estimated over 40% of cancer patients in the US don't receive optimal pain treatment, and in our country, the situation may be even worse. Just in morphine-type painkiller usage, we're at less than 1/10 of America's level. How should we properly manage cancer pain? WHO's cancer pain guidelines recommend a 3-step approach. From regular painkillers to opioids like morphine, then combination therapy. Many patients and medical staff fear opioid addiction, a key reason for inadequate pain relief. But as discussed earlier, drug dependence isn't addiction. When disease is severe, painkiller addiction risk is extremely low. NIH research shows under 1% of cancer patients develop morphine addiction. Additionally, the author believes treatment should follow these fundamental principles. First, pain assessment should be done by the patient themselves, not medical staff. Pain is a subjective experience.
Your pain level is whatever you say it is.
Second, there's no standard dosage. The right amount depends entirely on the individual patient's pain relief needs. But in actual medical practice, these cancer pain principles are rarely fully implemented. This stems from complex factors: legal regulations, systemic issues, cultural attitudes, and social environments. For example, amid frequent doctor-patient conflicts, physicians sometimes ignore pain rather than risk accusations of painkiller abuse. All right, that covers the book's main content. Let's briefly summarize. In Part 1, we discussed controllable aspects of aging, like natural balanced eating, combining aerobic, anaerobic exercise, and cautious medication use. In Part 2, we explored common age-related diseases like cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, and cancer, along with prevention and treatment recommendations. While modern medicine extends human lifespan, it hasn't yet fully conquered the accompanying diseases and suffering. Regardless of how much time remains, everyone must recognize that today's choices shape how we'll age gracefully tomorrow. Remember, the earlier you start, the greater your chances of success. All right, this concludes our interpretation of elegant aging. Reading notes are below the audio. We'll see you next time.